Thank you for joining us today. This is our Know Your Pangyao, and we have a very special interview this afternoon with the founder and chief executive officer of the Zubin Foundation. So, the Zubin Foundation is an independent nonprofit organization whose main aim is to raise awareness on societal issues in Hong Kong, particularly for ethnic minorities. So, thank you for joining us, Ms. Shalini Mahtani. Hi, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. Is this live?
Not live, no,
actually.
It's pre-recorded, yeah. So maybe as the first question, if you could just start by telling us a bit about the Zubin Foundation, your background, your advocacy, etc.
Yeah, so the Zubin Foundation is a charity that works at improving the lives of Hong Kong's marginalised ethnic minorities, and we do this by providing opportunities to them and looking at ways of reducing suffering. We are a Hong Kong charity.
Can you tell us a little bit more about your slogan, "We shall overcome"?
Oh, okay. So the Zubin Foundation actually works, as I mentioned, with marginalised ethnic minorities. And we work with ethnic minorities in a range of different areas. So we work on women and girls, we work with children with special needs, we provide opportunities, we improve or enhance the voice of the minority community through public policy. We have a mental health clinic, which is the first one in Hindi, Urdu, and English for ethnic minorities in Hong Kong. And we've recently set up a COVID work. And with our COVID work, we I suppose, put the tagline on it, "We shall overcome." And I think the reason why we did that was when COVID started for us, it was after a period of awful social unrest in Hong Kong, which was dividing Hong Kong, and because we are part of Hong Kong, it was dividing us as well as a community. And I felt quite strongly at that time that we had so much on our plate as Hong Kongers, as the ethnic minority community, and then with COVID, it was overwhelming. And so it was kind of a message of hope that we shall overcome. And I think it was just in the depths of that despair that we hope that we shall overcome. And with the ethnic minority community, as you will know, 4% of our population is ethnic minorities in Hong Kong, but 1 in 4 households live in poverty, which means that they have a household income of less than 15,500 Hong Kong dollars per month. And so when you talk about we shall overcome, it is so important and so necessary to give people hope when they've lost their jobs, when they're scared, when their children are not going to school. And so that tagline made perfect sense for us and still does. During the time of COVID, we have pivoted our work, as many charities have done in Hong Kong. And we have kind of, if you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, we have kind of gone down the hierarchy of needs to the very basic needs that individuals and human beings need, which is shelter and food. And that is kind of the level we've started to address the needs of our population with. So one of the things we've started recently, well, in April of this year, so 4 months ago, was we've started a project called Care Boxes, which is really about distributing food boxes to the population. And as I mentioned, Hong Kong has gone through an awful turbulent time over a year now, and social unrest plus COVID, and COVID, we just don't know when it will end. But so many of our community have lost jobs in construction, have lost jobs in catering, and have lost jobs in the airport. And so we have seen a massive increase in calls on our helpline for women wanting to borrow money for food. We've also seen a huge increase in the number of people who are signing up to Opportunity Bank, which is where we register individuals who want jobs. So based on that uptake, we realized that there was something massive happening, and that massive thing that we were seeing was poverty. And so hence we distribute care boxes. And since we started in April, we have done one lot of 800 families, a second lot of 400 families, a third lot of 200 families, and this and next week we have 600 families. So in total, 2,000 families. And each family has 5-point-something children, according to our data. So about 10,000 individuals have been impacted by our care boxes since April of this year. It's been a real eye-opener for me, because one of the things I've learned is we talk about a Gini coefficient all the time, but this is the Gini coefficient in practice, you know, where we go to the communities that have, and they donate money, and we give it to those that don't have, and that the disparity between both is day and night. But what is fantastic is what I have seen during COVID is the people who give to us are people with faces. So they're individuals who have an income, who write a check or give a donation in cash or do a bank transfer. And they're people I know, they're people who reach out, they're people who want to help but have jobs and can't. So they give us money and we give to others. And the other thing I've noticed is there is this increased appetite for parents to get their kids involved, to see that they have a role to play in helping to alleviate some of the world's problems. And that is quite heartening, I have to say, that people are stepping up and saying, hold on a minute, let's let our children see this. This is important for our children to see. And so we've had, you know, the Hong Kong Cricket Club, for example, did a massive book drive, and with social distancing rules, adhered to help us pack and pack, you know, 600-800 bags of food. And so it's been a real eye-opener for me to see the depths of despair, hunger, abuse, violence against women, but at the same time to see that there is generosity on the part of those who give. And there is more than generosity, there's humanity. Because they're not just giving money, they're saying, how can we get our kids involved because they're not at school? How can we help in other ways? And so it's been a real eye-opener for me. But it's been an extremely hard time emotionally to see some of the suffering. Actually, it's been incredibly hard.
What issues would you like to see improve in Hong Kong, and how?
I think we've done a terrible job as Hong Kong in teaching ethnic minorities Cantonese. I think pre-COVID this was the case, and therefore some of the brightest girls I have ever met, Pakistani, Indian, Filipinas, and boys, you know, would come up to me and say, ma'am, I want to be a doctor, but I can't, I have to work in a restaurant. Ma'am, I want to be an engineer, but I don't read and write Chinese well enough. And when you hear that from such young children, born and raised in Hong Kong, second generation, third generation kids, it is unacceptable to me. Because we are a rich place. There is no excuse. And I think part of the problem in teaching kids Cantonese is it is one of the world's hardest languages, right? You just have to go onto, I think it's the US foreign, one of their websites, and you'll see that they rank languages in terms of difficulty. Chinese is one of the hardest languages on earth to learn, okay? Now, when you teach a second language, it is really important to learn to teach from the perspective of the learner, not the teacher. And we have done this subject of teaching Cantonese as a second language. We have not done anything about it. What we do in Hong Kong schools is we teach ethnic minorities the language the way a native speaker would learn it. When you learn English as a second language learner, there is a whole curriculum and a whole pedagogy on how you acquire English. Chinese is much harder than English, infinitely harder. And yet there is no curriculum and there is no pedagogy for learning the language as a second language learner. You do have it if you learn Putonghua. If you go to Beijing, there are curricula developed to teach second language learners how to learn Putonghua as a second language learner. Well, Cantonese, it doesn't exist. So we have failed our ethnic minority community because although they're able to speak brilliantly most of the time, their reading and writing is not up to par. Yeah. So how are we going to increase the capability or the capacity of ethnic minorities to read and write Chinese? That is the question. Because unless we learn that, we are not bringing this population out of poverty because they are not going to get the same opportunities in the workplace. We have to think about that. And I don't think we've thought about that. So if there is no second language curriculum and pedagogy, which for some reason Hong Kong does not want to develop, well, maybe another approach is something we should consider, which is something I've been thinking about. How about we teach EMs in English only and make them brilliant, which they have been in learning subjects in English. And then at 18, so get them getting top marks in English, maths, liberal studies, get them doing GCSEs, get them doing really well. And then at 18 saying you're not going to university until you've done 2 years of serious Chinese.
Yeah,
because what we have done has not worked, which is trying to throw kids in CMI schools at the age of 5 and have them learn the language and come out at 18 at the same level as the Chinese kids. It hasn't worked for a number of reasons. By the time a child comes into a Chinese language of Chinese medium of instruction school, they're already in a language deficit. They have not heard those words at home. Yes. And Hong Kong U's done a study that shows there's something like 10,000 hours already in a language deficit. 2, there's no curriculum that teaches them in the way that they can learn, because there's no second language curriculum. 3, the whole notion of an ethnic minority family going to school, coming home and doing 2 to 3 hours of homework is absurd. Yes. It does not align to our culture. You've gone to school the whole day. You can come home and do an hour, but you're not doing 3-4 hours of writing, which is what you need to do to learn Chinese.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
You have to. I mean, I sent my daughter to a Chinese school for the first 4 years of her life. I now understand that. And unless you do that, you cannot learn the language. But you're not going to change the cultures of all these subpopulations. So we've got to figure out a way of getting this population out of poverty. And the way to get them out is getting them learning how to read and write. We need to now be creative and look at ways of teaching this population to read and write. If we're not going to do it from the age of 5 to 18, because, you know, there are other things at play, why don't we just make them brilliant in English? Whatever it is, you know, history and geography and physics and whatever.
What they want
and then at 18, 2 years, you've got to do it.
Yes.
Add 2 years to the education, because at 5 and 6, they don't understand the need to do this, and their parents don't understand their need because the parents haven't done it themselves.
Yeah.
And they don't come from that background, which, you know, whereas a Chinese family understands the need to do it. At 18, they're going to be self-motivated on their own. They realize if they don't learn the language, they're not going to get the jobs.
Yes, yeah. The integration is a bit more difficult if you don't speak the native language. So yes, it totally makes sense.
So, I mean, I just think that if we are truly committed to inclusion, if we're truly committed to taking people out of poverty, there needs to be the reading and the writing of Chinese. And some kids do really well in the local system with CMIs. but the majority cannot come out because of the language deficit. I also think another issue is we need to start breaking down discrimination. We need a concerted effort by the government and NGOs working together to crack down, to call out discrimination, because it exists in so many ugly ways in Hong Kong. And it's really targeted at darker skinned people. And I think Hong Kong's at a place today where they can understand that. And so we need to work to start breaking down those stereotypes.
How can people get involved with the Zubin Foundation in terms of donations or volunteer work or by other means?
So the Zubin Foundation relies on donations. Please donate to the Zubin Foundation. Please go on to www.zubinfoundation.org. There's a page on donate, and you can send transfers of any amount that you're able to. If you're interested in volunteering, again, please send a note to info@zubinfoundation.org. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you're interested in doing to volunteer. There are always ways to help. If you've got a space that you're either willing to give to the Zubin Foundation for office space, or you're willing to let us use for some of our support groups or our training, let us know. Again, we appreciate the contributions from the community.
Thank you so much for joining us, and hope you have a lovely day. Lovely rest of the
Thank you very
weekend.
much.
Thank you so much for reaching.
Thank you so much.
God bless.